Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, and when we cut to the second commercial, we asked this trivia question. What was the name of the TV show that had the theme song Where Everybody Knows Your Name? That took place in a bar in Boston. And Michelle, you said you don't watch TV much, but you know the answer to this one.
Cheers!
Cheers! Yay! Cheers! Very good. All right, we are in the studio with Michelle Lerman, and Glenn Youngling is still here. He's going to pipe in with some great questions, I know. And Michelle, would you introduce yourself specifically, because you have specific disclosure? Go ahead.
Right, so I'm a lawyer. I'm a nice lawyer, though.
Now I could have said that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And I'm a certified specialist. So it's certified specialist by the California State Bar Board of Legal Specialization. So in other words, the same bar that certifies us to be lawyers certifies me as a specialist in trust, estates, and probate law.
Okay, I mean, I'm
Full day exam.
I'm certifiable, but that's different. Okay.
Right.
Now, we were talking about this earlier because you said this is a very hot topic. On your website, I remember seeing something about IRAs, and I can imagine the typical situation where you have husband, wife, and daughter, and the husband makes the wife the beneficiary and forgets about it, and the wife passes on. Isn't that a typical kind of situation? Go ahead, I'll let you finish.
Yeah, well, Glenn, you had mentioned about the scope of services in a contract, in a construction contract. And similar to that, with estate planning, it's critical that you understand the scope of services for your estate planning attorney. Are beneficiary designations included or not? And typically, it's not included in the scope of service. And typically, a living trust is not going to control what happens to an IRA. What's going to control what happens to an IRA?
The actual application.
The actual beneficiary designation. So in that situation that you mentioned, where you have a wife that was named and now the wife is deceased, hopefully they've named a contingent beneficiary as the son. And then it would just go to the contingent beneficiary. But what we see in our office is a lot of times people do something like they name my estate. Well, that's not what you name, because for several reasons, that is not considered a designated beneficiary for determining whether or not your forms are complete. And what will happen in that kind of situation is you could accelerate all of the income because you don't have someone designated who is considered a designated beneficiary.
When we say all the income, is this because it's in an IRA? It's
because it's in an IRA, and it's as if you don't have any beneficiary named, because an estate doesn't necessarily qualify.
So good for the IRS, bad for the taxpayer.
Bad for the taxpayer. You could have all that income accelerated when the person passes away. We've also had people who don't name anyone at all. Who do you want it to go to? And then it's often, right, then, I want the state to get my money.
They need the money.
That's right. They need the money. That's what should happen. And then you also have a big issue with probate. And we've opened a probate before simply because someone had a great estate plan, living trust, will, everything they needed except they had no beneficiary named for an IRA. There was no one named. And so it needed to go through probate in order to pass it on. Probate in California is very expensive. And it's based on the gross value. It doesn't matter if you're underwater on the property, meaning you have a lot of loans. So probate is typically not something you want to do.
Yeah, that's really scary. So you might have a piece of property that's worth $3 million and you owe $4 million against it, but the probate is considered $3 million.
Right, but in that situation, you'd probably give it back to the bank, the executor.
Okay,
probably
well,
just give it back to the bank.
But
but let's say you had a $3 million property and you had a loan of 2.9. So it's very expensive in California to go through probate.
Well, let's see. Let me also ask you the pitfalls of doing what they call a cookie cutter living trust. I know I'm kind of jumping around here.
No, that's good. That's a great question.
I looked at your website. You had great, and before we forget, we'll definitely get people to look at your website. But the cookie cutter living trust, because a lot of times you hear, you set up a living trust for $500, and why pay expensive lawyer fees? So.
Right, and I'll tell you something really true with estate planning is if you have a really inexpensive trust like $500, it really isn't worth anything. I went to a talk once that another lawyer gave. I'm not going to mention any names, but I was really curious what other lawyers out there were doing because I do a lot of public speaking. And he said, here, fill out this packet. mail it to my office, my paralegal will prepare the forms and send it to you. And it was like $500 for a trust. And I just cringed. I just absolutely cringed.
Because everybody's situation's a little different.
Is a lot different. Every situation is so different, and especially now with the changes in the state tax laws being as drastic as the changes are, from year to year things change. It's just so frightening. I mean, I've looked at plans that say I give everything to my children. And then I meet with a person, I say, oh, how many kids do you have? Oh, I don't have any children. How old are you? Oh, I'm 65. I'm not gonna have any children. And then it said, and if I don't have any children, then it goes to my aunt or whoever they wanted to designate next. But that's a cookie cutter trust. And it happens really frequently, and it's really scary.
Yeah, that sure is scary.
So, yeah. It's just important, especially to make sure that it's customized. The biggest problem I see now with married couples is that it used to be that we could only pass $500,000 of wealth without paying estate tax.
Yeah.
But now the law is you can pass $5 million.
And in 2010, George Steinbrenner did the smart thing and died.
Exactly. We all missed a great opportunity. I always tell people that. Missed a great opportunity there. But so a lot of married couples have what is often referred to as an ABC trust. If something happens to one of them, 3 sub-trusts are created. We nickname them ABC because I like to keep things as simple as possible. But with a $5 million exclusion, they might have a very small estate. They don't need an ABC trust. So that's an example of just an outdated trust and also a cookie cutter trust.
Yeah, and just as a reminder to the studio audience, we are in the studio with, I say studio audience, in the audience, we are in the studio with Michelle Lerman, who is a lawyer who specializes with estates and trusts. Okay, and before I forget, because I don't want to forget this, how do people get a hold of you if they are interested in getting more information about estates?
Right, so our website would be really helpful. Lots of great articles, and I am going to also offer a special report on 5 estate planning myths, what's the truth, and find out before it's too late. So on our website, it's realestateinvestorlaw.com, realestateinvestorlaw.com, or lermanlaw.com.
Very simple.
So that's the best way to reach us, or by phone, 454-0455.
Okay. And Glenn, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I was listening to the trust part, and one of the things in homeowner associations that's in vogue now is rental limitations. And when there is a change in title on the property, the new owners coming in often think that they'll be able to just turn around and rent it out. So for anybody that's estate planning and it includes a home in an association, it makes sense to double check the CC&Rs and see whether the conveyance of the property is going to trigger an owner occupancy requirement or be subject to a rental cap.
Oh, that's a good
point. And also, even for something like a co-op, sometimes you can't, aren't there even restrictions on who you can pass it to at all? Or can it only go to family or children or?
Yeah, co-ops are pretty unusual in California, but they're the norm if you get into New York. There are a few of them out here though, and it's a separate breed of animal in the homeowner association industry. They do have restrictions. For example, the new owner coming in has to apply and be accepted by the board of directors. It's not like real property, it's more like stock ownership. In fact, that's what is happening, and the people have to be approved. They vet them financially. They have to give a profile of themselves.
Wow, and so that's the other thing about cookie cutter is you really have to look at what the asset mix is. Is it a condo? Do you need to look at CC&Rs? Is it an IRA that has a beneficiary designation that the trust isn't going to control? I had a client who called, he actually wasn't a client, he had another lawyer prepare a trust for his mother, and the trust said everything was to be left to him. And he called me completely irate because it turned out there was a $2 million bank account held as joint tenants with his mother and his sister.
You can't pass that, right? If it's joint tenancy,
if
it goes
it's
directly
joint
to
tenants, right.
It goes right to,
It goes right to the sister. And so I told him, I said, I understand that you're really upset. I was really glad I didn't prepare that estate plan. Boy, that lawyer really made a mistake there. But I said, go back and look at the engagement agreement. Again, look at the scope of services. Whose responsibility was it to transfer that $2 million account into the trust? Because if it's excluded from the scope of services, and if you say you're responsible for all the transfers to the trust, then your mom should have done
Petty
that.
cash, $2 million.
$2 million.
What's $2 million between friends, right? Okay, we are going to cut to our third and final commercial break, and here is our last trivia question. Okay, how about our theme song, which is the William Tell Overture, is the same as a show from the 1950s. What hero type show was it? Remember, you know what our theme song? Okay. The first 3 callers with the correct answer win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Their website is lighthouseforfun.com. Call 888-912-1190. That's 888-912-1190 to answer this question. Our theme song, the William Tell Overture, is the same as a show from the 1950s. What hero type show was it? Again, call 888-912-1190 and make sure to include your name, address, email address, and phone number, and we'll be right back.